So first thing, the main opposition, the Republican People's Party, CHP, took the biggest voter share in these elections, which is the first time that's happened under Erdogan's AKP, the Justice and Development Party. And this is a significant event. It's giving a lot of people hope, especially opposition voters, because they've never had such a large vote share. The problem and where I would be more cautious is that local election results do not equal general election results. So many people say here in the celebrations, you hear people saying this is a huge change for Turkey. Everything is going to be great now. And that's obviously not the case because still the party in charge is Erdogan's AKP. So, they're celebrating a victory. That victory is limited in scope. And the thing that they're most hopeful about would be that İmamoğlu's success, the candidate for CHP's success in Istanbul, means he can be a viable presidential candidate for the next elections in Turkey, which have to happen before 2028 or in 2028, but there could always be snap elections. So that hope that we're seeing in the streets is not necessarily for the present moment. The AKP is still the government. We still have a terrible economic crisis coming, and we live in one at the moment with high inflation. And the hope mainly comes as a result of future prospects for an opposition win. There's light at the end of the tunnel is the best way to summarize it. Basically, İmamoğlu shows that there can be an end to Erdogan's government and the AKP rule over Turkey, which, by the way, has been more than 20 years. And, the cause for apathy, a lot of low voter enthusiasm going into this vote, because people have been voting many times, more than a dozen times in the last 15 years, and the government stays the same. So people continue to cast ballots, and for the first time, the voter share went more to the opposition party, the main opposition party, and this is giving them that spark of hope. Like I said, Erdogan's still in power. You have to take it one step at a time. Anything can happen. We're going to have an economic crisis, according to pretty much any economist that you talk to, and maybe an Iraq operation in the coming months to solidify or create nationalism and distract maybe from some bad news coming from this economic crisis. The other thing I would highlight is the Yeniden Refah, New Welfare Party. It's a far-right conservative party. One of the reasons that the AKP was a bit weaker in these elections is because voters, conservative voters particularly, had an alternative choice. They had a Yeniden Refah, I'll call it New Welfare Party, and it's not exactly a protest vote because it's still in their ideology, but it is a light protest vote. So they could show they disapprove of AKP policies and still vote conservative. So this newish, let's say newish New Welfare Party is potentially something to look out for in conservative Turkish politics. They may grow after these election results, but nothing is clear. 3 years in Turkey, if we wait until the next election, 3 or 4 years in Turkey is, decades in any other country. A lot of things can change, but right now the New Welfare Party looks well positioned to consolidate its conservative vote. And the reason that people chose it are two mainly. Why would conservative voters choose another conservative party over Erdogan's AKP? The two main reasons are economy. A lot of people are unhappy with rising prices, rent prices, food prices are not keeping up with how much they're making. The income to expense ratio is way off the charts in Turkey. It's become very difficult to just exist in many major urban centers. And then the other reason is the Israel policy is what I'm seeing. New Welfare Party basically took a harder stance against Israel than the AKP and was more, critical. Erdogan was critical, obviously, of Israel, but New Welfare Party was criticizing that trade was continuing between Israel and Turkey, and they were, they didn't have to censor themselves as much because they're a small party. They're not the government. The government can't say everything it wants to about Israel, even if the AKP has had past friction with Israel, which has been fairly significant, right? So those are the main trends. You have the main opposition winning a large vote share. You have a new conservative party rising, and then you have the economic crisis coming, which the results of which we need to watch because no matter what, it's going to be difficult. We just have to see if they're going to deal with it with Mehmet Şimşek, the current finance minister, and orthodox monetary policies, or if Erdogan's just going to give us a surprise and decide that he wants to change economic policy. And that we have no forecast for because there's no way to predict any of that. I think most likely the people I talk to, economists following Turkey, say Erdogan has no choice but to remain with the current economic policy because there's not enough reserves and resources to make any drastic changes. So that puts inflation at 50% minimum at the end of the year, and that's still an economic problem for everyone. And we will continue to face high inflation. What else can I say is a fourth element would be Kurdish vote. The Kurds have Kurdish movement, basically Kurds that vote for Kurdish rights, and the Dem party, the pro-Kurdish party, they largely supported the opposition candidates where they ran in the West. And this was the big question mark before the vote. Would Kurds support Imamoglu, for example, in Istanbul, or would they support their own party candidate? It seems like a good amount supported Imamoglu, and this allowed him to have a fairly wide lead over the AKP candidate. So in the end, some people say polarization is going down in Turkey as a result of these consolidation points for the main opposition party. Others say it's strategic voting. Certain voters are just tired of AKP. They've been there for a long time, and we've had an economic crisis for a long time. It's yeah, from an emotional point of view, if you're suffering in your wallet and with your rent and with food prices, you will blame the government. And I think that's what happened this year. Many would ask, why didn't it happen last year? The answer that I'm getting is that the government was providing subsidies and had different programs to support low-income earners in Turkey. And those subsidies were removed with orthodox policies. So basically, by going back to normal economic policies, due to a lack of reserves and other options, the state no longer could cushion citizens from the impacts of the economic slowdown in Turkey and the devaluation of the lira. Basically, the lira has been going down in value forever, and the government was mitigating, softening the effects of that for its constituents, and that kind of melted away in the last 10 months between this election and the 2023 election. So that's what would explain the difference in the local and general election vote. The other thing would be that people who would normally vote for Erdogan maybe felt more liberty to vote for other smaller parties in local elections and also to express their vote or will or choice more freely because the consequences of local elections are not as big. The stakes are lower in local elections. They're more free to choose different parties. And there's, it's not exactly a betrayal of Erdogan, who, still represents big gains, big progress, big freedoms for people who are conservative. He talks for them. Other parties did not represent conservative voters the way that Erdogan does, and he remains their leader. The question now is what will happen with Erdogan and what will he choose to do? It could be anything, according to people that I'm talking to. He may run again against Imamoglu in the future. He says that this was his last election. He said that before, so it doesn't really mean anything. Yeah, so Fidan is floated as a name, the current foreign minister. But the problem with him is he's a technocrat. He's intelligent, he's fairly less known as a public speaker, and he's not super charismatic. He is intelligent and all that, you know, bookish stuff, but he's not the politician who's going to make people stand up and clap. So I really doubt that he would be a successor. More likely a Seljuk Bayraktar because he has public persona. He has fancy video crews following him around, and he does give public speeches on a regular basis. And it looks like he's warming up for a campaign. You can see the difference. Fidan is not doing that. He's not. He doesn't have a nice camera team following him around with nice lights. Bayraktar does. He is doing a public relations campaign. He does speak publicly. He's not an Erdogan. He's not as charismatic as Erdogan, but he's, medium charisma. So if you wanted to have a Chavez and a Maduro, Al-Bayrak is your Maduro for Turkey because he would be able to manage basically. The other option would be outside AKP, which is this new welfare party, the new conservative party that rose in the local elections. If they build up support, consolidate support, and their leader can build up voter base, these are all ifs. It could replace AKP. The main issue is that if the conservative vote remains divided, this means opposition will win presidencies. So the conservative vote will have many negotiations, let's say, in the coming months and years, and it's really up in the air. The problem with one man rule, one man governments is that there is no succession plan, and I mean, who's going to replace Putin? Who's going to replace other people that have more autocratic governments? They don't really have successor plans. That's the problem, and that's basically what we're going to be focusing on for the next few years in Turkey, in Turkish political coverage. Um, it's more likely, I would bet it's more likely that another party replaces AKP in the future instead of a weak AKP candidate succeeding in the future. But that's my view now. Obviously, anything can change between now and the next elections. And I'm saying anything. We don't know what will happen in Ukraine or Israel. We don't know if there'll be war with Iran and US. I mean, these are all variables that will impact Turkey. So, I mean, it's not just domestic politics, it's also global politics and how they shape security and threat perceptions, right? If AKP makes a coalition with New Welfare Party, if AKP makes a coalition with Kurds, this changes the dynamic. The nationalist alliance that AKP has had is getting physically older. The leader of the party, Bahçeli, is aging. And I'm not sure, talking to other people about this topic, whether other people in that nationalist party that AKP has allied with, I'm not sure if other members would continue the same alliance with the AKP. So there's it's really up in the air. Actually, it's very unstable time for Turkey if you think about it broadly. Anything can happen, and Erdogan remains at the head of the state. He still controls the country. But if different groups make their own deals and alliances, they could gain momentum and gain voter support to change dynamics the next time we have a vote. What Erdogan does, though, is always control the narrative. So that's what an Iraqi operation would do. We could also have a constitution referendum where we change the constitution in Turkey. That's a long sought goal by Erdogan. He's been talking about it for at least 15 years. So instead of allowing other actors to organize and control the narrative, usually Erdogan acts first and then everybody else is reactionary. My main question is whether he will have the ability to act, the money, the resources to act, and the energy. I mean, everybody has been campaigning. Erdogan is visibly older. He's 70 years old this year, and he's still got energy at this point, but what's that going to look like in 5 years, 4 years down the line?